Hello and welcome. This time we'll look at how to install WLED controlled Christmas string light outside, though if you like, it also can be used for other holidays too, maybe just not in a tree as we do in this video. So let's prepare and have a look at it after a short intro. Let's first have a look at the materials used, and here to start with, the string lights. The regular version was in my case sold out, and because I was in a bit of a hurry, I got the version that included a USB powered controller and even a remote control. This version could still though only be controlled from a phone by Bluetooth, and also WLED is more powerful, so I did not use the included controller. I bought it only for the string lights. So I recommend getting the regular version that does not include a controller, which is shown on the screen now. The LEDs used is the WS2812B type, so it's those that we have been using in previous videos on this channel, instead though in the form of string lights. When you get the regular version, then be aware of that they come in a 5V and a 12V variant. I use the 5V one. If you wanna use the 12V, be aware of you need to use a 12V power supply that cannot directly power the chip, but maybe that can be solved with a voltage converter from 12V to 5V, which though we won't cover in this video. We will only focus on the 5V string lights version. While I open the string lights and show the content that I spoke about before, I can maybe here in short mention in this video I will not go in great technical details because I have already made a video where I do that. That video is called Your First DIY WLED Project, though it can be considered quite comprehensive and cover a lot of details. So if there's things in this video that you think I could have covered better, then I suggest you to watch that video. Now to the ESP32 chip, or maybe more correctly called MCU, microcontrol unit. It's the one we install WLED in, and also from which we control the LED string lights. Nothing works without power, so of course we also need a power supply. This one is a 5V 7A power supply, which I also have shown before in the video called Your First DIY WLED Project, and which is also big enough to power our 100 LED string lights. Here just some Vago-like connectors, which I think is good enough despite they are not the original ones. I actually end up using 3 of them, not because I had to, but also because I connect the data signal too. Here just a 62 ohm resistor, which is the recommended size by WLED. It's used on the data signal between the ESP32 chip and the LED string lights. Now then just the usual capacitor, I almost said, and this is 10 volts and 1000 microfarads. It's gonna be installed between the 5 volt and the ground wire. Remember when you install the capacitor to use the right leg or pin for the ground side, which usually on the capacitor has a minus symbol on that side, while on the voltage side it usually has a longer leg. Now just some cable here that I'm both using for giving 220 volts to the power supply, as well as giving 5 volts to the string lights and the ESP32 chip. The string lights themselves are 10 meters long, and this cable I have here is also 10 meters long, though I'm not using all of it. But that is quite a long distance to supply 5 volt. And I actually had a little bit of voltage drop, but I prefer having only 5 volt outside and then keeping the power supply inside, though you might do it in another way. I just felt the little bit voltage drop that I had was not really a problem, cause it only happened on bright white and on full brightness. Also here I just use a 220 volt male power plug, and then just a green short data wire. I can't believe I'm spending time on such more practical items, but that also belongs to the project. Here it's just cable strips or cable ties, whatever you wanna call them. Then just an enclosure box for the ESP32 chip and the connections. It has a usable IP rating of 55, which I'm gonna use outside. Then finally just a box for the power supply, which I actually am gonna use inside because I think also the quality of this box isn't good enough. But for inside usage, then it's okay. It's also better to keep the power supply inside, because then you same time can keep the 110 volts in US or in Europe, the 220 volts only inside. Let's get ready to solder the wires to the ESP32 chip, which is the almost only thing we need to do in this project. At least it is the only soldering that we need to do. Here I'm just cutting a short bit of cable to power the ESP32 chip, which gonna be placed inside the enclosure box outside. Next, I'm just taking off the outer isolation of the cable. I prefer to use just a normal scissor for that part. You can of course use any other tool you like. And here it's time to strip the inner wires, where this tool I'm using, it usually is good enough for that job. And finally, I'm just giving the wires a twist between my fingers. Now we've come to solder the wires to the ESP32 chip. And this time I have the help, so to speak, from these helping hands that I think are quite good. Let's start with the 5V pin of the ESP32 chip, and I'm just starting with heating it up before adding solder tin to the pin. Let's also heat up and add solder tin to the brown wire, which I'm gonna use for 5V. Now time to solder the brown wire to the 5V pin of the ESP32. Now let's do the same with the blue wire, which is gonna be used for ground. Of course, as all the other times, it's very important to not mix up the 5V with ground. Now here we will solder the blue wire to the ground pin of the chip. To see which pins it is on your ESP32, you should check out the pinout diagram, which usually is something you can get from the seller of the chip. Now let's heat up and add solder tin to the GPU16 pin, which is the default data pin for WLED. Let's now prepare the green data wire. And also then add some solder tin to the wire. And actually now solder the wire to the GPU16 data pin of the chip. While we also here need to add solder tin in the other end of the data wire, which is gonna be used together with the resistor. Now let's look at the resistor. Where we also need to put solder tin on before we can solder the cable to it. Now just preparing the last data wire that's gonna be soldered to the other end of the resistor. And then just taking the isolation off in both ends of the wire. Then this time I'm twisting the wire onto the resistor. Then let's solder the last end of the data wire to the resistor. And with that, we are finished with the soldering part. Let's now install WLED in the ESP32 chip so we can control the string lights. So let's start with going into WLED's official installation website, which is install.wled.me. Let me to start with just say in short, if you experience problems connecting to your chip, then you can in step number 2 on the screen read more about how to install the USB drivers for your chip. But let's now go straight forward with the installation and just start with clicking on the install button on the screen. Next comes a small pop-up window where you just choose the correct COM port that your chip is connected to. Now it should successfully connect to your chip, and an even smaller window will show with the title WLED. Here just click on Install WLED. Now another message will show where it's asking you if you want to install WLED. Also it says that all data on the chip will be erased. Now wait, let go of your mouse, and here before the next step, take your ESP32 and hold down the boot button on the chip and keep it down. While you keep the button on the chip pressed, then with your other hand, take the mouse again and on the screen click on Install. When the percentage number on the screen it starts to climb, then you can let go of the ESP32 chip. Now I just let the video go faster so we don't have to wait on the installation to finish. Now the message on the screen changes to say that the installation is successfully completed. And you can just click Next. Now you can set up the Wi-Fi in the chip. It's important to notice it is 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi that you need to use for the chip. So just find your SSID in the list, and then after that, enter the password for it. Now a new message comes in the window, and it says that your chip is now connected to your network. Here just click on Visit Device. Here now it shows the WLED page from your chip, and to start with, just a short message saying thank you for installing WLED, then also asking you if you want to give a little bit of information to WLED about which chip you're using. I'm just choosing not now, but you can of course choose whatever you like. Let's now just do some few basic settings. If you want to know more about the settings, I recommend to watch the video that I made about starting your first DIY WLED project. Up at the top of the page, just click on Config. Next in the list now, click on LED Preferences. Since I'm using the default GPU 16 pin on the chip, then I don't need to change the GPU pin that is used here in the settings. But what we always need to consider is the power usage, which of course is depending on how many LEDs there are in your project and the size of the power supply you also are using. The 100 LEDs in the string lights for this project is maximum using 6 amperes, which also is 6000 milliamperes. So if I'm okay with that the LEDs are using the maximum power they can use, then I can actually just set the number here to 6000 milliamperes. But of course, you should never set it to bigger than the size of your power supply. You should actually do the opposite, set it to less than what your power supply size is. Since I have a big enough power supply of 7 amperes, then I just turn off the brightness limiter here. Then I will do the rest of the settings a bit later. Let's get the last items ready here before we later in the video can finally start connecting everything. Here I'm just rolling out a bit of the string lights to see both ends of the wires and also just to see where the USB controller is that it came with. But else there should not be a lot of difference from earlier projects to these string lights because they have the same LEDs as we have been using before, which is WS2812B. Now I'm just cutting off the original USB controller, simply because I don't need it. Now I'm just taking the 3 wires apart from each other, which is the 5V, data and ground. Also, so we can start working with it. Then I'm just taking off the isolation of the 3 wires. Now I'm just gonna prepare a shorter 220 volts power cable, or had it been in US, then it would have been a 110 volts one. It's gonna be used for the power supply. First I'm just gonna take off the outer isolation. Then I will strip the inner wires after. And of course doing the same in the other end. And for this cable, also the inner wires need to be stripped. Last but not least, we need a power plug for this cable. This one, if not used in all of Europe, then it at least is very similar the ones used. So the ones that you have available might look different, but at least the principle should be the same. Since we only have two wires here, phase and neutral, then it doesn't matter which wire you connect to left side or right side. As long as you don't have an earth wire, it always needs to be connected the correct place. I'm just opening the screw terminals to get ready to connect the wires. And here I'm starting to connect them. Just a small hint to be aware of, these types of connectors, they usually have a cable clamp or a cable holder or whatever we should call it, but which is not meant to hold on to the inner wires. It is meant to hold on to the isolation of the entire cable. So when you mount it, then make sure that it is the isolation that is gonna be under the cable clamp. Now all there is left is to put back on the cover for the plug. I'm sorry that my hand is in the way for the camera, but only screwing a screw in, so it's quite simple what I'm doing. This box here is gonna give the power supply a little bit of protection, but it's gonna be used inside only. And also I'm gonna drill some holes in it so air can go in and out. And then also some holes for the cables. This box here is of course meant to have the power supply, but before we can connect the 220 volts cable to the power supply, we need to first run the cable into the box. If you have this type of power supply, then mind to connect the 220 volts or 110 volts to the correct place on the power supply. I'm connecting the brown wire to L on the power supply, which also means phase, and brown is the color code for phase in Europe. Now the time has come to the blue wire, which is gonna be connected to N, which also means neutral. And with that, we have the 220 volts connected to the power supply. Let's do the final basic settings and test our project for the first time. Before we start, I also just want to say you can get the WLED app in Android Play Store or on iPhone in App Store. First, just click on the plus symbol up in the right corner. Then click on Discover Lights near the top. And it found our WLED device, so just click on the check mark up in the right corner. So let's now go into our device. I put it to green, but it's red. Purple, but it's blue. Green again, but it's red. Click on Config. Now go into LED preferences. Scroll down to color order. It is set to GRB, but set it instead to RGB. And just save. Now go back and into the device again. Blue and it's blue. Yellow and it is yellow. Purple and it is purple. Go back in Config, LED preferences, and scroll down to length and change it from 30 to 100. And save. And we are done with the basic settings. Let's now finalize the project and make it ready to be outside. Here I'm starting with preparing one more cable, and it's of course the cable that's gonna go outside from the power supply inside, giving 5 volt power to the chip and the light string. I'm gonna use the brown wire for 5 volt and the blue wire for ground. Now stripping the 5 volt wire and the ground wire. Then we are done with one cable end. And we need to do the same with the other end. When you are working with DC power, meaning in our case the 5 volt and ground, it is important to double check more times that you correctly connect the wires. Let's now put the longer cable here that's going to go outside into this box here that's going to be inside so that the power supply can go into the box. Then I've taken a little bit extra cable out of the top of the box so we can start working with the cable. And I need to replace it with the shorter test cable we used earlier. Here I'm connecting the blue ground wire to the power supply. It's very important that you connect the wires to the correct place on the power supply. Now I'm just connecting the brown 5 volt wire to the power supply. Where it says V plus and V minus on the power supply, we now have the 5 volt cable connected. Here I'm opening all the vacuum connectors and taking the wires out so that I can install the wires in the outdoor enclosure box. The box that's gonna be used for the chip. Here now I'm just making a smaller hole for the cables that's gonna go into the box. It's the 5 volt cable that's coming from inside that's gonna go into the box, and also the wires to the light string. I'm starting with inserting this 5 volt wire from the power supply into this vacuum here, meaning this vacuum will only be for 5 volt connections. Also together with this wire, I'm inserting the 5 volt pin of the capacitor. Then I'm giving the 5 volt wire from the light string together with the 5 volt wire from the chip a twist. and then I will insert them together in the Vago. Before connecting the rest of the wires, I just think it's easier to put on isolation tape now. I will start with putting green tape on the data wire and the resistor. Then a bit more tape on the data pin of the chip. Then some red tape on the 5V wire and 5V pin of the chip. Then some black tape for ground. Now we're gonna connect the ground wires, and to start with, the ground wire from the power supply. Same time, we will connect the ground pin from the capacitor. Notice how you can see a minus symbol on the side of it. I'm twisting together the ground wire from the chip together with the ground wire from the light string. And of course inserting them both into the Vago connector. Finally, the time has come to connect the data wires. I'm also giving the data wires from the chip together with the data wire from the light string a twist. Now let's put it all into the enclosure box. let's finally proper close the lid for the box. And let's also finally put the power supply into its box. Let's now look at effects, presets where you can save the effects, and a playlist where you can make a certain order that the presets should play in after each other. First, I just go into the blends effect, and you can see on the tree that the colors also changed. Then at the bottom of the screen, there are some sliders that you can change the effect with to your liking, and I'm also doing that. Then at the bottom, go to the Presets tab. Then up toward the top, click on plus preset. Then either keep the name or give it a new name and press save. Then go back to effects and choose another effect. I go with colorful. Now I wanna change the colors of this effect, so I go to Colors tab. Here I scroll down and choose colors 1 and 2. So up near the top I choose the first color slot and I make it into being red. Then I choose color slot 2, which I wanna make green. Then we can see that the effect also is red and green. Now this one we of course also wanna save as a preset. So just press plus preset, maybe give it a name, and finally save it. Go back to effects. This time I'm going for color loop. And because I changed the colors before, I'm wanna go back and choose the default color instead. Then I go back to the effects and change the effect settings a bit. Then I of course also save this effect and its settings as a preset. Back in the effects, I this time go for color twinkles. And I also give that a bit of adjustment. Before I also of course go to presets and saving this one. Back in the effects, I this time find fairy twinkles. I go to color. And I set the background color, or called BG, to black. Then I want to see if I can find a warm white color. And then I go back to the effect and change the effect settings a bit. This one's of course also gonna be saved as a preset. This time I'm adding warm white to the name. Let's stay in Presets tab and this time click on plus playlist. and I just give it the name Christmas Playlist. If you go down under the name, then you can see the blends preset is already selected, and I just give it a time of 30 seconds. Then to the right side of blends, you can see there is a plus symbol. Click on that. Another blends come. Click on the second blend's name. I choose now colorful, second in the list after blends. Click again on plus, but now next to colorful. Blends it comes again, so click on its name. Choose now the third item in the list, which is color loop. Click on plus next to color loop. And click on the new blends. And choose number 4 in the list, which is color twinkles. Click on plus next to color twinkles. And yet another time we're gonna click on the new blends. In the list we're gonna choose fairy twinkles warm white. And finally at the very bottom click on save. Then I just click one time on our new playlist, so it starts the playlist. And let's see the playlist being run at least one full time. It is of course starting with the blends preset. And now the colorful preset we made. And color loop preset. Now color twinkles preset. Now fairy twinkles warm white. The playlist should go in a loop, so let's just see it starting over again with blends. And there we go, we are back to number 1 in the list, blends. Okay, let's do some settings that is related to automatically turn on and turn off our lights according to sunset and sunrise. So the first thing we need to do is go up in config and into time and macro settings. there it's a good idea up near the top to enable the NTP server. Then let's have a look at time zone, where I'm in Europe, so I choose CET. Now we need to give WLED our coordinates. The browser might complain, but just say allow once. Then the coordinates showing in the browser, but we also give that to WLED, so click on set in WLED. When that's done, you just click save. And just go back. Now we need to look at presets. And we need to do 2 new presets, where though I'm only gonna use one of them. The one I'm using is gonna be called turn off, and that's the first one I'm making here. So just uncheck use current state, then you can write a command, and that command is t=0. It will turn off. And then scroll down at the bottom and click save. The next preset here I'm not gonna use, but it can be smart to use if you sometimes set WLED manually to an effect and adjust some settings. Then this preset here will automatically choose the last effect that you have been running. So again, uncheck use current state and then type the command t=1, but it will only choose the last effect that you've been running, so it's not good to use for a playlist. And then scroll down and click save. So yeah, that was the reason I'm not going to use it for a playlist, because I want the playlist to run and not just one single effect. And also what is important to notice here is the ID number for the presets you're going to use. For the Christmas playlist it was ID number 6, and for turn off it is number 7. So for turn off that was number 7, and for the Christmas playlist that was number 6. So when you remember that, just go back up in config. And then again go into time and macros. And there you need to scroll down near the bottom, where you can see there is functions for sunrise and for sunset. For sunrise I will use the new preset number 7. For turn off. And then for sunset, I will of course use my playlist, which was ID number 6. And when you've done that, then click save. That's it, we are at the end. Thanks for watching. Please share a like. See you another time.
Under the lamplight's golden glow, your hand in mine sets the world aglow. The band plays soft, a gentle sway. Our hearts find, with night turns to day.